Hello, Enya. Hello, everybody. As you can see, you won't be able to see me at the moment, but I'm Mike from Wye Valley Alpacas, and our slide's up there. And as you can see, we've got a picture of pig and chickens because we do keep those as well. But I have to whisper because our alpaca, the other animals will get a bit upset, but the alpacas are more interested. And of course, that's who we're here to see today. I've got a few slides to show you. I promise you, it's not too many. But what I'd like to do is a map. I know this isn't where you are, but I just had to get a map of the area. So we're right down at the bottom left, and we're right on the border with Gloucestershire and Herefordshire, and right on the edge of the Wye Valley and right on the edge of the Royal Forest of Dean. And it's a really lovely part of the country. And today I think it's the first day I've been able to say that because it's literally been raining for the last 3 weeks over here, so it's been really wet and miserable. On the left hand side you'll see the aerial photograph. Right at the top right, above the pink dot, is the River Wye, and the trees that you can see around is right on the edge of the Royal Forest. And I'm about 3/4 of the way down that picture on the left hand side. You might just see a brown splodge, and that now is one of our girls' shelters. And the reason I'm with the girls is we've got more of them, and they like to show off more, and I can show you all sorts about them when I come and show you the animals. Bit of history for you. This is the world 45 million years ago, and that little creature there on the left hand side, Protylopus, was living in North America, or what we would know as North America today, actually in the southwest of North America. And I don't know if you can see there, but it looks quite deserty on the map. It's red rocked and there would be plenty of cactus. 45 million years ago, that was a huge rainforest, and Protylopus and a couple of other creatures like it were quite small, about the size of they ranged inside from a large rabbit, a really large rabbit, up to about the size of a small sheep, but certainly no more than 20 kilograms. And they were quite happy munching on leaves and munching on berries in the rainforest. As the millions of years moved on, the rainforests started to get smaller and they started to be replaced by areas of large grassy plains. So some of these creatures, or the descendants of Protylopus, had to walk much further to try and find food. And as they were doing that, they started to grow or develop or evolve humps on their back. And those humps were a way of storing energy, effectively storing their food for when they couldn't find it. And about 10 million years ago, those same creatures moved much further north into North America, actually above the Arctic Circle. And those animals grew really large humps, and they could store enough energy or enough food to last for about 6 months at a time. And of course, those creatures became what we would know today as our modern day camel. And they crossed over the world. If you'll follow the purple arrow, they crossed over the world at the top left, which was frozen, and they came back in on the other side. And they walked all the way through Asia, all the way through Africa, and some of them even walked all the way through Europe. And the earliest fossils of camel creatures are found in Spain from about 7 million years ago. Hopefully you can see a dotted line going from India to Australia, and we know there's a huge population of camels in Australia, but of course they couldn't have walked there because of all the water, and they were taken by the British when they went exploring, and they would have been used to carry all of their equipment, all of their packs, and actually they would chain about 8 or 10 of them together and they could pull huge carts. And of course, once the British had railways and engines and trains, they had no need for their camels, so they just let them loose, which is why there's about 1 million camels in central Australia today. Meanwhile, back in North America, creatures that hadn't developed humps, they started moving southwards, following the green arrow. And about 3 million years ago, a very special event happened, and the piece of land that has Panama on it today rose up from the seabed and joined North America to South America. And Protylopus's descendants could now walk into South America, and they became what we now know today as the alpacas and the llamas, and 2 other creatures, the vicuna and the guanacos, which I'll show you in a minute. But our alpacas are related to camels, and they're all part of the same family called the camelids. Now, back in North America, as the millions of years continue to roll on, the rainforests became almost non-existent, and Protylopus or its descendants was having to walk much further. And of course, humans had become much better at hunting. So by about 13 100,000 years ago, all of the camels in North America were extinct. And that's why you don't find camels in North America today. Now, as I mentioned, our alpacas are related to the camels, and they're all part of the same family called the camelids. And on the right hand side, we've got the camels. As you can see, really easy to spot, quite large animals with very obvious humps. On the right hand side, you've got the dromedary with its single hump, sometimes called the African or the Arabian camel, because that's where it's found today. Next to that is its closest relative, the Bactrian camel. Again, a lovely animal, huge humps and very easy to tell apart from the other animals. And that is sometimes called the Asian camel because that's where it's found today. Now, there is a third camel called the wild Bactrian, which looks very similar to the Bactrian there, but slightly smaller. And that animal is on the very endangered list. There's less than 900 in the world today, and they're found in very small areas of China and very small areas of Mongolia. Now, along the bottom, we have the alpacas and the llamas. And on our farm, all of the alpacas are like the white one on the left, called a wakaya. And they have a lovely, soft, flat fleece. Their closest relative, another alpaca, is the Surrey. And as you can see there, that Surrey has a special fleece. It almost goes all the way to the floor, and its ringlets are very silky fleece. So they're quite sought after, that fleece. And there are less Surreys than Wakai. It's about an 80-20 split in percentage-wise. Next to them, we have the llamas, the Chaco and the Kikara. And just like the alpacas split into two, the Chaco with the ringlet fleece and the Kikara with the flat fleece. And I know you can't really tell from those pictures, but llamas are much bigger than our alpacas. They weigh about 2.5 times as much, and they're much taller. So an alpaca will come up to just under my chin. A llama will have its head above mine, really quite tall. But I'm hoping you can see from the pictures, if you couldn't tell which was which, if you look at the llama's ears, they have a very curved or banana-shaped ear, and that's how you can tell the two apart. Now, so that you know, the 4 animals on the bottom, the llamas and the alpacas, you can't find them anywhere in the world in the wild today. They have all been looked after by humans for thousands of years. And the alpacas were always bred for their fleece to make things with, meat to eat and for fuel. And the llamas, because they are much bigger, they were bred to carry weight on their backs, and they can carry about 20 kilograms and walk for about 30 kilometers. And they're very good at walking up slopes with weight on their back. And some of the ancient tribes would have used them to pull wooden plows around their fields. Now, although you can't find them in the wild, they do have wild relatives. And for the llamas, it's the animal in the middle called the guanaco. Quite a special animal that's found in large areas of South America, mostly down the west side, but through Bolivia, Chile, Peru, all the way down the west side of Argentina. And it's spread from sea level right to the heights of the Andes at about 4,800 meters. So quite widespread. For the alpacas, their wild relative is the vicuña on the left-hand side. And now that's a very special animal. It's the smallest of the entire camelid family. It only comes in that colour, which we call fawn. I know it looks two-tone, but we call it fawn. And it has a very, very special fleece. It's really soft, really silky, and really fine. And because of that special fleece, hundreds of years ago, the vicuña was almost hunted out of existence. And the numbers dropped to under 6,000 in the world, and they've risen to about 350,000 today. And just so you know, top left is a picture of the Peruvian coat of arms, and just to show you that they still love their animals, in the blue section is a representation of the vicuña. So they're very proud of it, and they are protecting it. And the vicuña now is protected in law, so you can't hunt them. Now, the next slide I've got for you is a very strange one, or you might think it's a very strange one, but it's a picture of a fleece. But when I show you our alpacas, they've been sheared recently, so it's very difficult for me to show you this. But this is a fleece from one of our babies, and babies are called cria until they're a year old. And if you look at the wavy lines in the fleece, that's what we call crimp. And the more of that you have, the better the quality of the fleece. And because this is a baby's fleece, it is a very good quality one. And just for a bit of fun, the others didn't get to see this yesterday because it's difficult to show you, but this is one of our very special alpacas, Mila. And as you can see, she is actually a cub, and she's wearing her necker there from the First Royal Forest, our local group. And she had an investiture a few months ago, between a couple of lockdowns, and you'll just, unfortunately, we couldn't have a lot of people. You'll just see our Kayla in the background, and we had one other cub with her, and Mila had to say a promise. She got there in the end. We helped her out with a few words she struggled on, but she got there in the end. And actually, she's really loving being a cub, and she has nearly finished her first badge. And of course, she chose alpaca grass eating, and she's just a little bit worried because she doesn't know where to sow it when she gets it. So that's the end of our slide. I now have to work out how I flick back. How do I end my slide? There we go. Let's go back there. Let's go back. So hopefully that's my slideshow ended. Yeah, okay. And now we should be able to see the alpacas. Oh, it's all going well today. It's almost like we planned this. So here we go, guys. This is the alpacas. That's who you really wanted to see today. It's really, really bright, so I'm going to just try and focus my camera. As I say, it's unusual for us to have a bright day, but these are the alpacas. And one of the things I was telling you is they've been looked after by humans for thousands of years, probably as far back as 9,000 years, to the early tribes of South America. And the reason we know that is they were very good. The early tribes are very good at documenting their animals. They would do cave paintings of them. Normally they'd be pictured really colourfully wearing scarves and pom-poms. But they were also very, very good farmers and very good at looking after their animals. Although they had some strange rituals or strange thoughts about their animals, they thought they would bring them good luck, and they thought they could see into the future. And on archaeological digs, they'll sometimes find an alpaca buried under the house, which is where I'm guessing they thought they would bring them good luck. But if we move forward a few thousand years in history, I'm not sure if you will have done this in school just yet, but you may have heard of a very powerful civilization called the Incas. And they absolutely loved gold and silver and gemstones, or the royalty of the Incas did anyway. But one thing they loved more than all the gold and silver they had was their alpacas. And they were fantastic farmers. And in fact, the Incas are responsible for about half the vegetables we eat today. They were very, very good farmers. But they were also very good at looking after their animals too. And they had a special caste of people, or trade group, that was responsible for breeding alpacas. And they were very good at it. They were breeding the very best animals they could with the very best fleece. And back then, they were probably the equivalent of what we would say a pedigree animal is today, the very best of its breed. As I said, they were very, very good. But the Incas were also really good at making things with the alpaca fleece. And if you were just the normal average Inca in the street, all of your clothing would have been made from alpaca fleece. So from the socks on your feet to the hat on your head and a huge fleecy poncho in between, all would have been alpaca fleece. Now, if you were Inca royalty, you'll remember I mentioned about the vicuña at the beginning and its special fleece. All of your clothing was made from vicuña fleece. And back then, they were protected by Inca law. And if anybody else was caught wearing vicuña fleece or even shearing a vicuña, they would have been in serious trouble. And the Incas weren't very nice when it came to discipline. So some very unpleasant things would have happened to you. And everything, and the Incas are also really good at using the fleece for other things. So they would turn alpaca fleece into ropes, and that rope they would turn into rope bridges. So the Incas would cross huge ravines or gorges on bridges made from alpaca fleece. So they must have been really, really strong. Now, everything was going well for the Incas and the alpacas. And back then, between the alpacas and the llamas, there was probably 50 million animals in South America. They were everywhere. And certainly every Inca settlement you went to, you would have found them. And unfortunately, one day in 1532, the Spanish invaded and they wanted to rule over the Incas. Of course, what the Spanish really wanted was all the Inca gold and silver, and they wanted to take it back to Spain. And they didn't understand why the Incas loved their alpacas so much. They just thought they were a strange looking sheep with a long neck, and just didn't understand it really. But what they did know is if they were going to rule over the Incas, one way to upset them was to kill off all of their alpacas, in fact, all of the South American camelids. And that's exactly what they did. So between the Spanish troops, who slaughtered as many animals as they could possibly find, and their own sheep, which had all sorts of diseases the alpacas couldn't deal with, they managed to kill about 98% of the herd number. So they nearly all disappeared. But what the Incas did is they formed an army 5,000 strong, and they took whatever animals they had left and they took them to the heights of the Andes at about 5,000 meters, so half the height of Everest, and they hid them there for nearly 100 years until the Spanish had finally left. Fortunately, other Europeans came along and they realized how useful alpacas could be and how useful their fleece was. So they started to get the Peruvians to breed them again, and slowly but surely the numbers have risen. And for the alpacas today, it's nowhere near where they once were, but there's about 4 million animals in the world. 3 million of those still live in South America, with 1 million spread out to other countries. And in the UK, we have 45,000 alpacas. And the reason I know that is because although we are a farm, these animals are classified as exotic pets. And just like your cats or a dog, if you've got one, our alpacas are chipped in exactly the same way. So they have a chip in them, so I can track where they've come from. I know who their parents were, and I know quite a bit about them. And some of these girls here, I know more about their family history than I know about my own. So we know lots about them. Now, alpacas first came to the UK in the early 1800s. So when the British went off exploring, if they ever went to South America in their ships, they would quite often bring back an alpaca. And of course, back then, nobody really knew how to look after them. Alpacas need some very special care in our wet weather. And they need some very special vitamins and minerals to keep them healthy. And nobody knew that. So unfortunately, the alpacas just died. They next came to the UK in the 1950s, but you'd have only seen them in a zoo. The odd rich collector had some, but chances of seeing those was pretty rare. So they're a relatively new animal to the UK, and a herd of about 150 arrived in 1995. And back then it was quite a news article, these strange creatures arriving. And from there, the numbers have risen and the numbers of farm in the UK has increased as well. Now, the thing you have to remember about alpacas is before they were looked after by humans, they were just like any other wild animal. And these creatures were what's called prey animals. So other things would have been hunting them. The animals like mountain lions, coyotes and wolves all would have been hunting them for food. And because of that, they've developed or evolved some very special senses. And the first thing to notice, of course, is that alpacas all have lovely big ears. And of course, lovely big ears means that they've got very, very good hearing. I'm just going to bring you over here. So one of our alpacas, I'm hoping you can see, she's just stuck her ears up and pointed them forward. And that means she's seen something she doesn't like, and she's going to let the herd know. And you'll see that the alpaca next to her has done exactly the same. And what they're going to do is stay there until whatever it is that's spooked them disappears. But we'll talk about that later. That's Annabelle. So big ears means they've got very, very good hearing. And one of the reasons I know that is if I shake a bucket of food from the bottom of the fields, they'll all stick their heads up to see if I'm coming to feed them. The other thing they have is very, very good vision. They've got very good night vision too. And hopefully you can pick it up on the camera, but all of our alpacas have a very dark eye. So unlike us, we all have different coloured eyes. Alpacas pretty much have the same dark shade. And I'm hoping you can notice as well, unlike us, there's no white around their eyeball. So when they look left or right, it doesn't give away their position, and another animal doesn't know where they're looking. The other thing I can't really show you because their eyeball is so dark, unlike us, they don't have a round pupil. They have a rectangular pupil, and that so that they don't get blinded by the sun when it's low in the sky, so other animals can't sneak up at them using the sun as cover. Now, there's another very strange thing I can't show you because they're not worried at the moment, but alpacas have a third eyelid, and they can close it from the front of their eye at the corner, and they'll close that if they think an animal's going to claw them, and they just need to protect their eyeball. So very, very special. Now, if we look at this one here, you'll see her top lip is split. Look, she knows what I'm about to do. They know the program. And I'm going to feed her, and if you watch her lips ever so carefully, she'll use them like two fingers, and she'll push them forward. Hopefully you can see that there. Oh, she swallowed something a bit big, I think. There you go. She'll just push her lips forward when she wants it. And their lips move like two little fingers. So very clever. Now, one of our alpacas, if she'll do it, she may just be eating a bit of hay, so she might not want to do this. But if she chews my finger, hopefully you'll be able to see they don't have, you might just get a glimpse of it, they don't have any top front teeth. I don't know if she'll let me. We might come back to it, but you have to trust me, they don't have any top front teeth. You'll just see a flash of her gum. And they use that hard gum pad along with their lips to tear off food. And they're very good at tearing off grass, and they know to tear it off. So unlike other animals, which will rip it up from the roots, alpacas know that if they tear it off, it will just grow again, and they've got a constant supply of food. Now, although they don't have any top front teeth, in their mouths they have 32 teeth in total, most of them right at the back of their jaw where they chew. And I'm hoping while they're chewing some hay, you'll notice that they chew in a figure of 8 motion. And what they're doing is moving the food to the back of their mouth, and they'll mix it with saliva to make that easier to swallow. And when they swallow their food, it goes down their nice long tummies and into their stomachs. And these animals have 3 stomachs. And when they first swallow their food, it goes into their first stomach, and it mixes with all the digestive juices, and it starts to ferment a bit like brewing beer, and they'll start to slowly digest it. And what alpacas will do is bring that food back up. So sometimes you'll see them with a lump in their throat, and they'll start chewing again, even though they haven't been anywhere near food. And they can do that for about 75 times. And it's very similar to cows, which we call chewing the cud. They'll bring up their grass and re-chew it. When they're finished doing that, they'll swallow it, and it'll go into their second stomach. And there it mixes with more digestive juices, ferments even more, and they'll start to really break it down and digest it. And because of their stomach design, they're very good at getting the most out of the nutrients in the grass, or the goodness. So they don't actually need very good quality grass. And when they're done with that, moves to their third stomach, which produces protein, which helps them keep themselves fit and healthy. Now, if we move all the way down to the bottom, if you look at their feet, you'll see they just have 2 toes on each foot. There's no hoof. Underneath is just a soft pad. And on top of each of the toes is a toenail, which we trim for them every 12 weeks about. And this odd fact about alpacas is that whatever colour their toenails is the same colour as their gums. So if they've got pink toenails, they have pink gums. And if they have black toenails, they have black gums. I'm not sure why. I'm guessing it's just a pigment thing. Now, of course, the most important thing, almost magical about alpacas, is their fleece. And just like camels, their fleece is designed to keep them cool on a hot day, but lovely and warm on a cold day. So the recent snow we had over winter really didn't bother these girls. Now, hopefully, when I first touch her, she's cold, and then all of a sudden she gets really, really warm. And now you can see why I showed you that picture. Normally, my fingers would disappear into their fleece, but you can see she's been sheared, so she's not much on there. And next to her skin, she's lovely and warm. And on a hot day, you can almost burn your fingertips on their skin. But they're used to that. They can deal with it. And as you can see from our alpacas, they come in all sorts of different colours, from white to black and all the dark shades in between. And there are some very lovely grey alpacas that have a fleece that looks sometimes pink or purple, depending on the light. And there are some very rare alpacas that have a fleece that looks like leopard skin. Now, alpaca fleece is also hyperallergenic. It's really, really soft. So if you've got any skin issues, it's very good for people with skin complaints. It's what's called hyperallergenic. So if you've ever put a sheep's wool jumper on and it makes your skin itchy or scratchy, alpaca fleece won't do that. And just so you know how special their fleece is, you'll find it in firefighters' jackets. So when the firefighters are running around, it'll keep them cool. But if they go into a burning building, it'll protect them from the heat. It can protect from really high temperatures, actually. Now, alpacas can live to about 30 years old. And our eldest is Leonie here. There you go, Leonie. And our youngest is Oreo. And she's outside having a sunbathe. And she is 11 months old. I might disturb her when I walk near her. This is Oreo. And she's 11 months old. And she's actually an orphan. So when she was born, we were bottle feeding her. And we bottle fed her for up until a few months ago. She's a very lovely colour. It's called blue black. And of course, we called her Oreo because when she was born, she was jet black and she had that little white face. I don't know if this one's just going to show you. Hopefully you can see it. They don't have any top front teeth. There you go. So that's our alpacas, guys. If you've got any questions for me, just type away and I'll get asked them.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for that. Yeah, there are a couple of questions. The first question is, how many alpacas do you have?
So we have 33 alpacas when we have our babies born. And we're quite small farms. So there are farms with a lot more than that, especially ones that are selling the fleece or using the fleece. So it's not unusual to have farms with 100, maybe 150 alpacas. And if you were in Australia, it's not uncommon to have alpaca farms with 3,000 alpacas.
That's a lot of alpacas. Do you mix the male and female alpacas in the same pen, or do you keep them separate and then?
Oh, is that the birthing alpacas? Or
yeah.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we've got 2 girls here that are pregnant. In fact, Enya, who's sitting down there, she's pregnant. She's almost due, actually, which is why she's having to chill out. And Nadia, who's just eating. And in a few months, what we'll do is we'll move them across to our other paddock. So we've got 2 other pregnant girls in there. So we'll put all the pregnant girls together. So they're just separated.
How many baby alpacas can one female give birth to?
So 1 baby normally. They're quite a big baby, so they weigh between 7 and 8 kilos. So normally they just have 1. They can have twins. It's unusual, and unfortunately twins won't usually survive. There are cases where they do, but it's not a common event. So just the 1 normally.
Another question is, what noise do alpacas make?
So they don't make a lot of noise. I've been trying to listen. So alpacas are you may just hear a hum. It's a very low level. It's very difficult to hear. I'm not sure the microphone will pick it up, but when they're chatting to each other, it's just a low level hum. When they get stressed or a bit annoyed, that noise gets louder, but most of the time they're very visual animals, so they'll do lots of body language, their tail and their ears. So when I showed you that alpaca earlier with her ears up pointing forward, that's a bit of body language.
All right. Okay. Excellent. Another question is, how do alpacas get a wash?
They'll roll around in a dust bowl. So we've got some dusty patches for them. And when it's this sort of weather and it's starting to dry out, what they'll do is they'll find a dust bowl and they'll roll around it. And actually, we have some very special dust it was actually made from prehistoric shellfish. Only comes from Germany. And it's a very special dust that they love to roll around with. And that will clear them of mites as well. If they've got any mites, that will get rid of those.
Oh, excellent. Another question is, can you eat alpaca meat?
You can eat alpaca meat. There are 3 farms in the UK that process them for meat. It's like a lean meat, a bit like goat. And if you're in Peru, or if you ever go to Peru, alpacas will be on most restaurants' menus. They're just the equivalent of a sheep in Peru. So they will eat a lot of it. A lot of alpaca.
Excellent. Another question is, are alpacas endangered?
No, they're not. There's 4 million of them in the world today. Not a lot compared to other animals, but that doesn't put them on the endangered list. So the vicuña that I was talking about earlier has come off the endangered list, and there's about 350,000 of them. So the only one of the camelid family is the wild Bactrian, and there are less than 900 of those in the world today.
Oh, wow. And then the final question is, how do you feed, what do you feed alpacas?
So alpacas really love grass, and that's what they eat most of the day, well, all day in fact, and most of the night. They don't really sleep, they'll nap. You'll see them here, they're just having a little top up with hay. And the reason for that is it's rained here for about, I think, 3 weeks solid. So our grass is very, very wet. So we just give them some hay. Now you might just be able to hear them humming.
Yeah.
That's baby. She wants to get to the food, but the adults are all in the way. So let's see if we'll give her some food. This is Monkey. There you go, Monkey.
As soon as the good stuff comes out, they all want to.
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
That's Benita coming in for the food.
Do alpacas not like wet grass, or is it just?
No, it's just they'll prefer dry grass. And the thing with alpacas is they have to eat a lot of it. So they need 1.5 kilos worth of dry grass a day by weight.
Wow.
So if you imagine weighing a blade of grass, that's an awful lot. So if they're eating damp grass, they've got to eat quite a bit of it. So they do like a nice bit of dry hay. And as the days get warmer and hot, we'll start to tailor off with the hay. There's plenty of grass for them.
Yeah. Excellent. There are no other questions in the Q&A. But that is great. Thank you, Mike.
No worries. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed it, and stay safe, everyone.
Cheers, Mike. Thank you.
Cheers now. Bye-bye.